See, in the house, in the studio, it is the one and only.
The one and lonely, yes, Paul.
The one and lonely is what I said. And it's sitting in the big chair is John Horhn. Good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning.
You know, we've been doing this for so long. Back when we started, we had no gray hair. You realize that?
Well, mine was jet black, Paul.
Well, mine was jet brown, so it was. It was not black, but it was certainly not gray. Forgive the throat here. I'm having a few issues this morning. Members of the Jackson City Council said it's time for somebody else to manage the city's water treatment plants, citing multiple water crises, a growing lack of confidence in the city's ability to run them. The council approved a resolution Tuesday of this week requesting the mayor engages in a third-party management company to run the O.B. Curtis J.H. Farrell water treatment plant. And I think that was something that you said you thought was a good idea.
Yes, I did. I think that the city has sufficiently demonstrated that it doesn't have the capacity to get this job done. And, we need an expert partner to come to the scene.
I think both of us want, and the people of the state of Mississippi, and again, I know sometimes people think this is a local issue, but let me go back to Flint, Michigan. People think about Flint, Michigan, and they cast a pall over the entire state. Anytime the heartbeat of a state is its capital city. I don't care if you're living in Pascagoula or Pearl or Pontotoc County. It doesn't matter. We all have an investment in our capital city. It's part of us. It's where our capital is. It is the largest city in the state. It is kind of a badge that we hold up when it is got mud on it. We all feel it. I mean, that's it. My problem is here, the city's entered into contracts before, like on the water system, the sewer system, and billing. They did this with Siemens, did they not?
Yes, but it wasn't a third-party administration. It was just
But it was a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. At the end of the day, there was a lawsuit. Now, you got to tell me, and the people who really want to find a solution to this, what's different this time?
Well, I think in this case, you're talking about an administrator to come in as a third party to take over the water system for a certain period of time. I think what we're talking about, what I would prefer is a lease arrangement. I don't think that we ought to sell the city's water sewer administration off. But I do think that we need an expert partner who's got the expertise and the financing to be able to fix this problem.
Well, the financing is a big part because if it's a private if it's a private entity, they want to see the bottom line. They want to make money on this. They're not doing it for gratis.
Yeah, and that's got to be watched very carefully. But someone coming in here is not going to come in here for nothing. They've got to be able to see some sort of benefit from it. So I think you got to walk a fine line of balance there.
What control would the mayor still have over Siemens as far as contract negotiations and things such as that, and the city council for that matter?
Over Siemens?
Yeah. Let's say, not Siemens, I mean, whoever the private firm is that came in and took this contract.
Well, again, I think you've got to be careful in how you shape that contract and who has authority. I would like to see some involvement of the Public Service Commission in any steps forward, because I think they've got some expertise that can be brought to the table.
Yeah, but
I
legally,
think there needs to be some oversight on the case of the Department of Environmental Quality and the State Board of Health if you're going to look at the whole system. Now, if you're just talking about the drinking water system, then it would be Department of Health.
I don't think you can fix one without the other, John.
No, you cannot.
All right, but here's my problem with that statement you just made, and we'll take as much time as we need here. But the problem with the first statement that statement that you made is those agencies would come in after the problem has ensued, after there's another contract or misallocation of funds, et cetera, for the most part. You got to have some money. As a matter of fact, the state has assets that the city needs. If the state did this, they got $400 million in ARPA funds, American Rescue Act Plan dollars. Now, that's a lot of money, but this is going to take a lot of money. I'm talking about ARPA funds if the state got involved. If the state got involved,
you mean the remaining ARPA funds that are available? Yeah,
they're about $400 million.
That's
if
correct.
The state is going to make a significant investment in the infrastructure of the state's capital city, should not the legislature, the state, have some say-so in that?
Oh, absolutely. I think we came awfully close this past session of doing a measure that would take the control of the Water Sewer Administration from the city. What came up was the question of liability. Are we going to be assuming the liability as well? So everybody kind of peeled back and said we need to study this a little bit more. But I've been contacted by a number of TPAs, third-party administrators, who are not asking for money from the state, who are looking to put an arrangement together on behalf of the city, for the city, that where they can independently operate the Water Sewer Administration, not just the drinking water, not just the wastewater, not just the billing and collections, but the whole shooting match. And they're willing to bring the money to the table, and also the expertise and administrative know-how to get this problem fixed.
Can you mention who they are as far as, because that's a big deal.
Not, but it's some credible companies, but I don't want to mention their names.
And they are willing to make that type of investment in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Is this to patch the current water system or to replace it?
To fix the system and to fix it.
When you say fix, you mean to repair or to replace?
Well, a lot of it needs to be repaired, but most of it needs to be replaced, and they would act accordingly. We're talking about new technologies, new equipment, personnel, which is a big issue, dealing with all of that, but to get us back to a first-class system.
Who, John, would protect the taxpayers on rate and having that written into where the rates would not be outrageous in case the company went bankrupt or something?
And I would insist on any sort of rate increase to be subject to review by the Public Service Commission.
How is that different then than having the state come in with ARPA funds and money that's already available and take that headache off of the Jackson City Council and the mayor?
The state doesn't have enough money for this, Paul. We're talking about $1.2 billion at a minimum just on the wastewater problem, not to mention what's going on with the drinking water, and not to mention what's going on with billing and collections. So the state, as I said back in the spring, came close to considering that. But the question of, the same law firm that sued Flint, Michigan, is now suing the city of Jackson. Does the state get that liability? So those are questions that we could not answer at the time, and still can't now.
Well, wait a minute. The other question is, can you handle that liability? Because they sued Flint, Michigan for $600 million.
Exactly, and that's why the state peeled back.
The city and the county both received about, in some of the show prep that I did, $87 million. That was Jackson, I think he got about $42 million.
Well, Jackson got 47 and the county got 43.
What did they spend that money on?
I couldn't tell you. All I know is that the city, of the $47 million, the city said that it would commit $25 million of the remaining balance toward this issue. The county, I think they said $5 to $7 million that they'd be willing to put up.
Well, we don't know for sure, and there are some people who are telling me that it was not spent on water and sewer.
No, I would agree with that. A lot of it was spent on other recovery measures, some economic development. I think there's a small business assistance program that got stood up by the county. So, had it been me, Paul, I would have doubled down on every penny I had out of my ARPA money, but it ain't me.
I understand that.
It's others. So,
well, but just in that statement there, you should worry like everybody else, and certainly the people in Jackson, white, black, young, and old, that those same bad decisions would be made in cutting a contract with a private entity in the long term. I want to ask you more things coming up.
Okay.
Can you hold on for a second? Oh,
sure.
We'll take as much time as we need.
Okay.
My friend John Horhn, Senate District 26, Hinds County, Madison County, Chairman of Senate Labor Committee, and also Vice Chair of Senate Tourism. We'll see if we can sneak in a couple of things on that one with John Horhn. Coming up. Gracious Allah. How y'all doing? It is a Tuesday. Let me get back with the good Senator John Horhn. I point of clarification, because it's still ringing in my brain. You said one of the reasons that we couldn't take this possibly to step 2 is because of the liability to the state. And I'm a little bit confused because we are already named in that lawsuit by the same firm as you mentioned that sued Flint, Michigan, the same law firm. So we are already being sued. We are already named in that lawsuit.
Yeah, but we're not on the front line in the lawsuit, and I think that there's the rub, is who's up front and in person to take the first hit. And the state had some serious concerns about taking on the entire water system, taking it over. And does that mean that we absolve the city of its liability? Yep. And we take on the entirety of the liability? All those are questions that are yet to be answered.
Is the city council now, the mayor, saying that not that long ago they needed hundreds of millions of dollars, and they would like to have that from the state, and now they don't need it at all?
No, they're not saying that. But what I continue to exhort the city about is, look, we need a number. We need a firm number. What is it going to take to fix the drinking water system? What is it going to take for the wastewater? We've been told the wastewater is about $1.3 billion. So we don't have a clear sense of what is the total picture. We don't know how much it's going to cost to really get the billing and collections back straight for the Water Sewer Administration, and that's a really important ingredient in all of that.
I got to ask you there. You're there every day, and you must be seeing some horror stories from flushing toilets, the schools, the businesses. It's not pretty what's happening, is it?
Not at all. In fact, it's a great embarrassment that here we are in the 21st century, and our capital city and our state has these kinds of conditions that ratepayers and citizens are having to endure. So it's something that desperately needs to be fixed. And I think probably one of the things that inhibits the city more than anything else is that they've been in crisis mode for so long. I don't know if they can see the forest for the trees right now.
Good point. Where's the garbage contract?
I have no idea. But I will say this, that I believe that the garbage contract issue was a manufactured crisis. This is a real crisis, and it needs to be treated as such.
We had, you start looking at the dilapidated buildings. I don't think anybody's even raised a sledgehammer to the building since Frank Melton. We have that. We have homelessness. We have garbage contract is still up in the air. The crime is out of control. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, there was a story last week that the Jackson couldn't even pay its bills. 2 of the sewer vacuum trucks were repossessed last week. The city failed to pay for the invoices. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but I don't think it's a function of not having the money. It's a function of administration mishaps.
Wow.
I think
that's even worse.
That we have got to put. Here's my take on it, Paul. Mm-hmm. Jackson needs a Marshall Plan. You recall after World War II, Europe was torn up, and Germany in particular, but a lot of the countries in Eastern Europe were decimated. And General George Marshall was tasked, who had been commander of the Supreme Allied Command, was then tasked after the war to go in and rebuild Germany as well as Europe. And all the whole of Europe that was affected, and I think that Jackson, from stem to stern, needs a Marshall Plan.
But John, that calls for leaders who are real leaders. That calls for leaders who care about the people they're representing more than the office they hold. I mean, that takes a special man and woman to look to the future when they're no longer there to see what is best for every single citizen and their children and grandchildren. And boy, we are lacking of those leaders.
Okay. Look, I'll say this, Paul, that we often have individuals, not just in Jackson, but in other places in the state and other places in the country, who know how to get elected, but they don't necessarily know how to govern. Now, that's not a knock at them per se. It's just
an understatement.
It is a situation where we probably need to spend a lot more time and resources as a state making sure local elected officials have all the right tools and resources they need to make proper decisions.
Wait a minute, is that a function of the state? Why is that a function of the state?
Well, the state has programs to assist local elected officials right now. You can go to understand issues about finance, municipal or county finance. You can go. I think Mississippi State has been involved with programs like that help local elected officials become better elected officials. So I don't see it as an inappropriate thing for the state to be involved with.
What happened to Greyhound? They are relocating to Flowood. There was another big announcement yesterday.
We knew that was coming, but we didn't know it was going to arrive as quickly as it did. Back during the session, it was made known to the Jackson delegation toward the end of the session that Greyhound was saying we need at least $1 million worth of improvements to Union Station. It is plagued with leaks in the building. It's unkempt. It looks ratty. There are homeless folks and vagrants who use the place as a hotel at night. It's unsafe, and they said, look, you guys are going to have to do something about it. Well, the city's broke in that regard, and they didn't have the money to cover that particular issue, and we were unsuccessful at the last minute of getting some resources from the state.
I cannot imagine with these people. This has been since July the 22nd, boil water notice, and I think if you ask the families and the businesses, and you probably have, that are having problems flushing their toilets, paying for bottled water, et cetera, like a third world country. If you ask any of them, would they mind paying a fair price for clean water that they can bathe and drink and wash, flush, just like people in Madison or Clinton or Pearl, everywhere else? I don't think they would mind paying a fair price.
Yeah. Well, the other issue is, am I getting a fair bill? And we still have problems with the city's billing system.
Oh, it's broken.
It's absolutely broken. And so anybody who comes in has got to approach that issue as well. The drinking water is one leg of a three-legged stool. The other leg is wastewater. The other leg is billing and collections. And so you've got to be comprehensive about your solutions.
What percentage of people are not paying their water bill in the city of Jackson?
I don't know percentage-wise, but I can tell you that when we tried to give the city some assistance a couple of years ago, and then again this past year, with a means of not forgiving debt but setting aside debt, what we were told by the folks who should know is that there is probably about $200 million that is deemed uncollectible. Uncollectible. Folks have either moved or they've died out, or they have they're deep in poverty and they have no ability to pay. So we devised a system whereby we would reward folks who got back into the rhythm of paying their bills. And so what we found was that there was about $45 million that was collectible that wasn't being collected.
Mm-hmm. What percentage of this problem would you go on the administration? I understand the funding, but making bad decisions.
I wouldn't put it just on this administration. I think there have been a series of bad decisions that go back about 25 years. We've kicked this can down the road successively for the last generation, and now the chickens have come home to roost.
True. Mayor said yesterday, by the way, he needed manpower and looking for an outside contractor to help. The Environmental Protection Agency said it was a problem just trying to get somebody to work at the Jackson water treatment plant.
Well, and I don't buy that you can't find folks, but we do have at Fuel Water Plant, there is I think there are 5 Class A workers there that are required by EPA. At O.B. Curtis, there are 2. And so you can't expect to run a great system when you don't have the qualified personnel there in place.
Do you think, with what you know about your district there, that the city, the men and women, businesses and individuals would care who who it is
No,
took over
they would
as
not
long
care.
as it's taken care of. They don't care.
As long as it's dealt with.
Do you think the state legislature? Do you think the state legislature would do this?
Given the right situation, yes. I think that liability question has got to be answered in the next few weeks before we
If that's
before
a
the
stumbling
state maps a
block.
plan.
Yeah,
I think we've got to get that liability question answered.
If that's the stumbling block, you're telling me that you think the legislature understands the seriousness of this.
Oh, no doubt.
Right.
There's no doubt in my mind.
John, great stuff there, man. I appreciate it very much. We'll have to have you back on. We'll talk tourism a little bit later on.